Hello, today we're going to be taking a look at our new micromanometers as well as the app that can be used along with these devices. I'll begin by turning on both devices and showing off how they work in standalone mode. So I'm just going to hold both of them here, wait until it says measuring, and now they're both on. First off, I'll be going over the various screens on the devices. The first screen, as you can see here, is the live view. This screen shows the live pressure right here, and this will be same on both devices. It shows the status up in the top middle. Currently it shows as active. If it shows as a V for void, that means the current reading is not accurate. It also shows the battery percentage in the top right and the units in the bottom right. And now if I press this button, it will take me to the averaging screen, which looks similar to the previous screen, except there's an additional number down here. This number is the live value, as you just saw, and this new bigger value is the average value. So it will average the pressure over time. And lastly, if I press it one more time, this takes us to an information screen showing the name, the MAC address, the version, and the temperature. And we can press it one more time to go back to the live screen. Before we get into using the app, I will demonstrate the other features of the devices themselves. So first off, we're going to go over the zeroing. But before we do that, we need to look at two things. First is this is an MXS and this is an M. The XS stands for extra stable. And also take note that their readings are different. This one's currently about 0.2 and this one being about 0.7. So for the M to 0, we are going to, as it shows down here, press between 2 to 5 seconds. So let me just do that. It will pop up on the screen. It says release to 0, and it will 0 the value. Now it's showing 0 as the reading. So I'll do that on this device, except on this one we have to hold longer than 5 seconds. So be careful when you're holding it down, make sure to read the message that it shows here. And now it says 0, and I'll let it go. Now it's showing about 0. And now to turn off the devices, you want to do the opposite of what you did to 0. So for the MXS, you do a long press between 2 to 5 seconds, so let's do that here. It says release to shut down, and this one will be longer than 5 seconds. So it says 0, and now it says shut down. And that is the functionality of the standalone devices. Now I will begin showcasing how the micromanometers interact with the app. So I have a phone for each device and I'll connect them right now. So I'll connect this one to the M11 and this one to the MXS. Once they connect, you'll be brought to the simple screen, which just like the on-device displays shows the live reading and the average reading. The screen also has the battery percentage in the top left, the status in the top right, the temperature in the bottom right, and it also has a button to 0 in the bottom left. So if I add some pressure to these devices, as you can see they're both going up. I can press the 0 button and it will 0 it both on the app and on the device. And once it stabilizes, I will press 0 again. And there you can see it goes back down to 0. The next screen on the app is the graphing screen, and you can navigate to it just by tapping down there. It logs the pressure over time. On here you can zoom into data, and you can tap on the point and it will show you information down here. So this one, it says it was about 730 pascals, shows the temperature and shows the time at which that reading was taken. And now I'll zoom back out on it. There, we're back to zoomed out. And you also have the averaging time down here, which you can use to see how changing the averaging time will affect your data. So if I slide it to a higher value, you can see that these values only go up to about 200. But if I put it lower, it goes up to about 1000. and so that's because the pressure is being averaged over less of a time. And also I can increase the pressure right now, and you can see how immediately it increases. So right away the line goes straight up, whereas if I turn it off again and let it drop, it drops down pretty quickly, and now it's back to the bottom. But if I put the response time very high, you can see that whole period was actually up at the top, and it still is right now because it's averaging over 30 seconds right now. Now I will show how the data is archived. So if I go ahead and disconnect from the device by going to the side menu, going to connected detectors, and hitting disconnect, then I can go to the archive, and here is all my archive data recordings. So if I go to this one, it should be the one that we just did, and everything here behaves just as the previous screen did, except for the fact it is on previous data recordings. Now I will show some of the settings that you can change from the app. First off, if we go to the app settings, then we go to manometer settings. Here we can change the units that's displayed within the app. So if I change this to inches of water, we can go back, and now all of our readings are shown in inches of water, and this also shows up on the graph as well. And if we go back to app settings, we can also disable the graphing and disable the recording of location. And now if we want to have changes to the micromanometer itself, we go to detector settings. And here we have averaging time and units. Now here, if I go to the average screen on the device, we can watch how changing the averaging time affects the readings. So I will change the averaging time to 1 second. Oops. We'll put it to 1. And now it should be very responsive but less smooth. So now let me increase the pressure. And as you can see, the average value jumps up very quickly. And it jumps down very quickly. Now if I change the averaging time to a higher value, let's go with maybe 60, and I increase the pressure, the reading should jump up very slowly but more smooth. So as you can see, this one's already up, and the live value here also shows the higher value, but the average value is taking quite a while to jump up. We can also change the units on the device by going here, changing it to inches of water, setting that, and now you can see the value has changed on the device to show the new unit. One thing to take note of is these settings will only work if your micromanometer is on a version 1.3 or greater, so as you can see, this one's on version 1.3. Now I will go over the differences between the devices. The MXS, as its name suggests, is extra stable compared to the M. While they are both extremely sensitive with a resolution of 0.1 Pascal and 0.0001 inches of water, the M can drift due to certain conditions. And although certain conditions can affect the reading of the M, in stable conditions the readings will be stable. And I will show that by a demonstration here. So first, one of the conditions that causes the M to have less stable readings is gravity and orientation. So as you can see here, they're both zeroed out and their readings are about 0. And if I put them on their sides, you can watch the MXS stays at 0 while the M goes to about 0.3. The thing is though, if I zero it, it will be stable here. And if I put them back, you should see the MXS should stay stable, whereas the M was not. And now I'll raise them up. So here the gravity is affecting it. The M is changing from 0.2, whereas the MXS has stayed at 0. And if I bring it back down, you can see the M is at negative 0.3, whereas the MXS is at 0 still. Okay, now I will show how temperature affects the stability of the devices. So I've frozen them down to about 13 degrees Celsius, and I'll connect to them here. Okay, so now that they're both connected, let's zero them both. Okay, so they're both zeroed. Now let's watch how, as the temperature rises, the readings change. So we can probably go to the graph screen and that would give a nice visual of how it affects it. So here we have the MXS, and here we have the M. So the MXS should stay more or less stable, whereas the M should, looks like it's constantly decreasing. So we'll just let it run for a while. It's currently at 13 degrees, and let's just check. So we'll watch the temperature rise up. It should come up to about 20. Okay, so we've waited till they've risen up. This one's at 16 degrees and this one's at 15 degrees Celsius. And so as you can see, the MXS here has stayed within 0.1 of a Pascal, whereas the M here has started from 0 and gone all the way down to negative 0.35. So there's been quite a change in stability here. And one thing to note though is that if the temperature is stable, so will the readings. It's only when they're changing, and same goes for the orientation. One last thing to note about these devices is on older versions, on boot up of the device, so when you're turning it on, it would automatically zero, but as of recent versions, they no longer do so.